Hey everyone, welcome to KSSP Podcast. I'm Spencer,
I'm Katie.
and today our series video is gonna be about nutrition. So, with that, we're gonna be looking into a couple of different aspects, I guess, of nutrition. So, we'll be looking at sugar, fats, dairy, gluten, fiber, caffeine, vitamins and minerals, supplements, and then the Mediterranean diet.
So we'll be going over some of the basics of what they are, as well as how they each may potentially affect mental health and what foods they're in.
And while we're going to be mentioning what studies have shown on various mental health issues with nutrition and supplements, it's also important to understand that diet is a very individualized thing, and what has been shown to work for others may not work for you due to various individual factors. If you are able to work with a healthcare provider and or nutritionist, that will be the most helpful.
And we also understand that while changing diet can be a helpful and effective tool, it may not be achievable for a bunch of various reasons like cost, availability, time, etc.
So, to get started, we're gonna start with sugar. So, what is sugar? Well, sugar is a sweet tasting, soluble carbohydrate.
There are simple sugars. Those are also called monosaccharides. And these are glucose, fructose, and galactose. So the atoms in fructose are bonded together in a different order than the glucose or galactose. This makes it a structural isomer. So glucose and galactose have atoms bonded together in the same order, but they are differently arranged in space. So this makes them stereoisomers. And glucose and galactose are aldoses, and fructose is a ketose. So an aldose is a simple sugar known as a monosaccharide. It has a carbon backbone chain with a carbonyl group on the endmost carbon atom, and this makes it an aldehyde, and hydroxyl groups connected to all the other carbon atoms. Aldolase is essential for the metabolism of fructose. Reactive aldehydes can impair cellular functions and exacerbate organ injury, acute pain, and inflammation, and they've been linked to cancer and cardiovascular disease. Meanwhile, ketoses have the carbonyl group away from the end of the molecule and are therefore ketones. So ketones are an alternative source of fuel for our body, and excess ketones upset the chemical balance of your blood, and if left untreated, can poison the body. Your body cannot tolerate large amounts of ketones and will try to get rid of them through the urine. Eventually, they build up in the blood.
And then there are also compound sugars, which are called disaccharides or double sugars. And they are molecules made of two bonded monosaccharides. An example would be, or some examples would be sucrose, which is glucose and fructose. There's lactose, which is glucose and galactose, and maltose, which is two molecules of glucose. And what does the body do with compound sugars? Well, in the body, compound sugars are hydrolyzed into simple sugars. And what is hydrolysis? It is the chemical breakdown of a compound due to its reaction with water.
So there's also corn syrup. We might be asking ourselves, what is corn syrup exactly, and is it worse for me than natural sugar? So corn syrup is a cheap source of sugar. It is industrially produced by converting corn starch into sugars such as maltose, fructose, and glucose. Independent of whether or not sugar in general influences obesity and weight gain, sucrose and HFCS have no significant, so HFCS, high fructose corn syrup, so those have no significant differences in their effects on the body. Before 1975, sucrose was the primary sweetener in processed foods, but since then, high fructose corn syrup is now the primary sweetener in processed foods due to its low cost.
And overall, we may be wondering, is sugar bad for me? Well, so the brain needs glucose, which is sugar, but it only needs 62 grams of it in a 24-hour period. So while sugar is necessary for the body to function, it is important to not take too much in. So moderation, it would be good there. Excessive consumption of sugar has been implicated in the onset of obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and tooth decay. In 2015, the World Health Organization recommended that adults and children reduce their intake of free sugars to less than 10% and encouraged a reduction to below 5% of their total energy intake. Sugar refiners and manufacturers of sugary foods and drinks have sought to influence medical research and public health recommendations. And then the AHA, American Heart Association, suggests a stricter added sugar limit of no more than 100 calories per day, which is about 6 teaspoons or 24 grams for most adult women, and no more than 150 calories per day, which is about 9 teaspoons or 36 grams of sugar for most men. And then we're also going to be talking a little bit about sugar and how it may affect mental health. So to start, we're going to be looking at just sugar and depression. So there is evidence that eating too much sugar may increase the likelihood of developing depression. According to a meta-analysis, there is a correlation between eating sugar and having depression reported at 0.95. So the magnitude of the correlation coefficient indicates the strength. So we may be wondering kind of what that means, that number, that 0.95 means. And the magnitude of the correlation coefficient indicates the strength of the association. So for example, a correlation of R equaling 0.9 suggests a strong positive association between two variables, whereas a correlation of R equal to negative 0.2 suggests a weak negative association. And again, they reported their association at 0.95. But it's always important to note correlation versus causation. Whereas causation means one thing causes another. So in other words, action A causes outcome B. Correlation is simply a relationship where action A relates to action B. So that's just always important to understand when discussing anything that finds a correlational link. And then research has shown that consuming sugar-sweetened beverages increases the risk of depression, and the more sugar consumed, the greater the risk. Eating a lot of unhealthy processed foods can cause your brain to have too much glucose, which may lead to inflammation and may contribute to depression. Studies have found low levels of BDNF in women with depression. Well, what is BDNF? It is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and it is a key molecule involved in plastic changes related to learning and memory. It helps the brain grow and develop and adapt to stress. And how does BDNF relate to sugar? Well, studies have shown high blood glucose levels linked to lower levels of brain-derived neurotrophic factor in rats. And research indicates that a diet high in added sugar reduces the production of BDNF. Without BDNF, our brains can't form new memories and we can't learn or remember much of anything. And then I also wanted to just briefly talk about the glycemic index, because that also appears to be a risk factor for depression. So what is the glycemic index? Well, the glycemic index is a number from 0 to 100 assigned to a food with pure glucose arbitrarily given the value of 100, which represents the relative rise in blood glucose level 2 hours after consuming that food. So we're just going to briefly look here at some glycemic index charts from University Health News Daily. So we're going to start with the low glycemic index chart, which is 55 or less. So that is going to be some fruits. So apples are at 40 on the glycemic index, grapes at 43, Some vegetables, there's carrots, raw carrots at 35, tomato soup, 38. So for grains, breads, and cereals, chickpeas are 36. And then skim milk is at 32. Cashews are 25. And then ice cream, full fat French vanilla is 38. And those were all on the low, which is 55 or less. And then we'll look at the medium glycemic index, which is between 56 and 69. So there we have cantaloupe, 120 grams at 65. We have pumpkin, 80 grams of pumpkin at 66. A white bagel is 69. A Nutri-Grain bar is 66. And then we'll look at the high glycemic index, which is 70 and higher. So watermelon at 100, or so if you have 120 grams of watermelon, that's 80. A microwave potato is 93. We got, it looks like a lot of cereal brand, which I guess that's not that surprising. Cheerios, 30 grams of Cheerios is 74. Corn Flakes, 79. Rice Krispies, 82. And then French fries, 75. So yeah, those are just some, just again, so that we're aware, because the glycemic index, again, just shows how much and how quickly a carbohydrate containing food raises our blood sugar level. So the lower it is, the lower the effect.
Yeah, so we'll briefly talk about ADHD really quick. There's a common perception that sugar causes ADHD, but a large majority of recent studies back up the idea that sugar does not cause ADHD. So with that being said, we'll move on and talk about some artificial sweeteners. What is an artificial sweetener? Well, it's a sugar substitute. Well, sugar substitute is a food additive that provides a sweetness like that of sugar while containing significantly less food energy than sugar-based sweeteners, making it a zero-calorie or low-calorie sweetener. So some examples might be aspartame, sucralose, saccharin, or xylitol. And what about them? Well, science indicates that many artificial sweeteners may be linked to depression as well. And one study showed that people who consume artificial sweeteners, mostly through diet drinks, are more depressed than those who don't consume such beverages. And several studies have also demonstrated that artificial sweeteners can be toxic to the brain, altering brain concentrations of mood-regulating neurotransmitters. And aspartame specifically has been proven to be especially damaging. A review of studies on aspartame found that it increases substances in the brain that inhibit the synthesis and release of the neurotransmitters dopamine, noradrenaline, and serotonin. And this causes oxidation, which increases harmful free radicals in the brain, which can cause brain damage and render the brain more prone to depression. And then there's sucralose. There's just been a study that showed that sucralose significantly alters the gut bacteria in mice, increasing a type of bacteria that other studies show is increased in people who are depressed. And it's just important to be aware of the potential adverse effects of artificial sweeteners, because there is mixed information on it out there. So in nutrition, biology, and chemistry, a fat usually means any ester of fatty acids, or a mixture of such compounds, most commonly those that occur in living beings or in food. So the term often refers specifically to triglycerides, or triple esters of glycerol, that are the main component of vegetable oils and of fatty tissue in animals. The term may also be used more broadly as a synonym of lipid. So that's any substance of biological relevance composed of carbon, hydrogen, or oxygen that is insoluble in water but soluble in non-polar solvents. And fats are one of the three main macronutrient groups in the human diet.
And then we'll go over a little bit of the physiology of fats. So, pancreatic lipase acts at the ester bond, hydrolyzing the bond and releasing the fatty acid. In triglyceride form, lipids cannot be absorbed by the duodenum. Fatty acids, monoglycerides, which is one glycerol with one fatty acid, and some diglycerides are absorbed by the duodenum once the triglycerides have been broken down. In the intestine, following the secretion of lipases and bile, triglycerides are split into monoacylglycerol and free fatty acids in a process called lipolysis. They are subsequently moved to absorptive enterocyte cells lining the intestines. The triglycerides are rebuilt in the enterocytes from their fragments and packaged together with cholesterol and proteins to form chylomicrons. These are excreted from the cells and collected by the lymph system and transported to the large vessels near the heart before being mixed into the blood. Various tissues can capture the chylomicrons, releasing the triglycerides to be used as a source of energy. Liver cells can synthesize and store triglycerides. When the body requires fatty acids as an energy source, the hormone glucagon signals the breakdown of the triglycerides by hormone-sensitive lipase to release free fatty acids. As the brain cannot utilize fatty acids as an energy source unless converted to ketone, the glycerol component of triglycerides can be converted into glucose via gluconeogenesis by conversion into dihydroxyacetone phosphate and then into glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate for brain fuel when it is broken down. Fat cells may also be broken down for that reason if the brain's needs ever outweigh the body's. Triglycerides cannot pass through cell membranes freely. Special enzymes on the wall of blood vessels called lipoprotein lipases must break down triglycerides into free fatty acids and glycerol. Fatty acids can then be taken up by cells via the fatty acid transporter. The human body can produce the fat it requires from other food ingredients, except for a few essential fatty acids that must be included in the diet. Vitamins A, D, E, and K are fat soluble, meaning they can only be digested, absorbed, and transported in conjunction with fats. So now that we kind of know a little bit about what happens to fats when we eat them, are they important? They are, as most things are. They are a major and dense source of food energy for many animals and play important structural and metabolic functions in most living beings, including energy storage, waterproofing, and thermal insulation. They play a vital role in maintaining healthy skin and hair, insulating body organs against shock, maintaining body temperature, and promoting healthy cell function. Fat also serves as a useful buffer against a host of diseases. When a particular substance, whether chemical or biotic, reaches unsafe levels in the bloodstream, the body can effectively dilute or at least maintain equilibrium of the offending substances by storing it in new fat tissue. Bad fats, such as margarine, shortening, and hydrogenated oils, are known or have been known to cause cardiovascular disease and other health issues. And then there are good fats, which are like avocados, almonds, olive oil, have been shown to prevent disease and benefit well-being. And it's important, as with anything, to just make sure you're using moderation. And it's, if you can, good to choose those good fats over the bad fats. And trans fats, the FDA actually banned trans fats in 2018. They ruled that trans fat was not generally recognized as safe and could no longer be added to food after the 18th of June of 2018, unless the manufacturer could present convincing scientific evidence that a particular use was safe. So for the most part, they are banned, but it's, I would say it's not, you can still keep an eye on it. Just because supposedly if a manufacturer can present evidence that it is safe, then they can still use it, which I don't, okay. But whatever. For the most part, they're banned.
So we'll talk about omega-3 fatty acids next. So what are omega-3 fatty acids? Well, they're crucial to mental health. So two omega-3 fatty acids, eicosapentaenoic acid, EPA, and docosahexaenoic acid, DHA, are thought to have the most potential to benefit people with mood disorders. So cold water fish like salmon, mackerel, sardines, tuna, shellfish, herring, and I guess sardines twice. So these fish contain EPA, and cold water fatty fish like salmon, herring, sardines, shellfish, and especially tuna contain DHA. There are different mechanisms of action that have been proposed. One of these is that omega-3s are able to interact with mood-related molecules in the brain after easily traveling through the brain cell membrane. Their anti-inflammatory actions also may help relieve depression. Out of the multiple clinical trials testing different omega-3 preparations to treat depression, most of them use it as an add-on therapy for people on prescribed antidepressants that have limited or no benefit to the patient. So few studies examine omega-3 treatment alone. These studies typically either use EPA alone or combine it with DHA, using doses equivalent to eating 3 meals with salmon per week. So to be most effective, these preparations have to have at least 60% EPA relative to DHA to be the most effective. And the most effective preparations appear to have at least 60% EPA relative to DHA, but while DHA is seen to be less effective as an antidepressant, it may be more protective against suicide. And specifically, overweight patients with elevated inflammatory activity are particularly good candidates for EPA treatment, according to Massachusetts General Hospital and Emory University. And because of variability between doses and the ratios of EPA to DHA conducted, along with other study design issues, findings on this are not unanimous. So various mood disorders such as postpartum depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, and attention deficit disorder. Omega-3s have been studied on these, and some studies point to benefits for patients with these disorders. So the testing on postpartum depression has shown really promising results. Well, with bipolar disorder, omega-3s are beneficial for dealing with depressive episodes, but not the manic episodes. So when used during manic episodes, the symptoms can actually be exacerbated with omega-3 use. And while studies look promising, there is not yet enough evidence to suggest the use of omega-3s in these conditions. However, the ability to use these treatments is, of course, the choice of the patients, although it's recommended to always talk to your doctor about these things first. Typically, omega-3s are tolerated well and safe to use. The most common complaints are of upset stomach and the fishy taste. Although thanks to manufacturing methods that reduce impurities, these are less frequent than they previously were. So while caution is still advised for patients using blood thinners or people about to undergo surgery, past concerns about the increased risk of bleeding have largely been disproven. And omega-3s are important to brain development. Because pregnancy can deplete omega-3 in expectant mothers, it's thought that taking omega-3 supplementally would be beneficial, and fish consumption in pregnancy is supported by the FDA. However, because long-term data on safety and most efficient dosage of omega-3s in pregnancy doesn't exist, expecting mothers should consult their doctors and be cautious about taking omega-3 supplements. So omega-3s are important for normal body metabolism. They're a vital part of cell membranes and provide the starting point for making the hormones that regulate blood clotting, contraction, and relaxation of artery walls and inflammation. They are essential fats, meaning we must get them from our diet. So 3 main omega-3 fatty acids are alpha-linolenic acid, ALA, eicosapentaenoic acid, EPA, and docosahexaenoic acid, DHA. So EPA and DHA are the two omega-3s that play the most critical role in mood disorders. And omega-3s promote brain health by lowering inflammatory markers and protecting neurons from excessive inflammation.
And then we're going to go a little bit more into how fats can affect mental health or mood. So we'll start with depression again. So consumption of fried foods has been linked to depression, and consumption of trans fats has also been linked to depression. MUFAs, which are monounsaturated fatty acids, and PUFAs, which are polyunsaturated fatty acids, have been shown to help decrease depression risk. Olive oil, which consists largely of MUFA or MUFA, has been shown to significantly lower depression risk. And studies have shown that people who consume foods high in omega-6 fatty acids have more than 4 times the risk of depression compared to those who consume foods high in omega-3s.
So let's look at anxiety for a second. Omega-3 may help alleviate anxiety, and a higher ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 has been linked with higher levels of anxiety. So coconut oil, lard, butter, olive oil, and palm oil are all relatively low in omega-6 relative to omega-3. Meanwhile, cottonseed oil, corn oil, soybean oil, and sunflower oil contain much higher amounts of omega-6 relative to omega-3.
And then we'll talk a little bit about inflammation. Omega-3, EPA, has been shown to help with inflammation. And how does it do that? It is thought to occur via anti-inflammatory and neurochemical mechanisms that affect the brain. It may occur via the brain's dopamine pathway. When the brain is inflamed, interleukin-1, an inflammatory marker, can increase dopamine levels in the nucleus accumbens, a collection of brain cells implicated in human anxiety. And studies have shown that omega-3s can suppress this effect in both animals and humans.
So now let's talk about sleep. Studies have shown that omega-3 fatty acids can help improve sleep, decrease inflammation and normalize sleep. They decrease inflammation and normalize sleep, and protect the brain from memory impairment in sleep-deprived mice. In a study, participants who received omega-3s experienced improved depression, less anxiety, and better emotional control. Over time, their sleep improved as well. Some fatty acids are precursors of prostaglandins, sleep-promoting substances in the brain. Other fatty acids contribute to the development of melatonin necessary for sleep, and they increase sleep efficiency and REM sleep.
And then we're also just going to briefly talk about diet here. Kind of just a couple of different things about diet. So the big thing is you want to maintain a healthy balance between omega-3s and omega-6. And unfortunately, the typical Western diet has more omega-6 foods, which is going to lead to disbalance. So eating in excess of omega-6 foods can trigger the body to produce chemicals that spike inflammation. And it turns out that most Americans need to cut down on foods high in omega-6 and try to eat more foods that are high in omega-3. So you may be wondering what those could be. I think we mentioned some before too, but we're just going to reiterate here because it's important to know. So foods high in omega-6 are full-fat cheese, high-fat cuts of red meat, corn oil, and palm oil. And then for omega-3, one of the best sources of omega-3 is fish. So that could be salmon, mackerel, tuna, herring, and sardines, as we mentioned before. And then I guess it also turns out that grass-fed beef contains more omega-3s than commercial beef. Alpha-linolenic acid, or ALA, is available from plant sources like edamame, walnuts, and chia seeds. So if you're thinking of maybe something that you could, so maybe something small that you could do is instead of using just like regular vegetable oil, you could try using canola oil with cooking. And then one more thing here is from the NIH. National Institutes of Health, Office of Dietary Supplements, and it's a fact sheet for health professionals, but they also have one for consumers if you wanted to look at that one too, on omega-3 fatty acids. So I mainly just wanted to kind of go over recommended intakes, and then just there's also a picture chart diagram picture here that kind of shows some different foods with, and then the grams per serving of ALA, DHA, and EPA. But first we'll go over recommended intake. So intake recommendations for fatty acids and other nutrients are provided in dietary reference intakes developed by the Food and Nutrition Board of the Institute of Medicine. It is the general term for a set of reference values used for planning and assessing nutritional intakes of healthy people, and they vary by age and sex. And so, again, these are just the recommended. It may vary per person too, but so adequate intakes for omega-3s. You have, well, age is birth to 6 months, so that's going to be 0.5 grams for males and 0.5 grams for females. For 7 to 12 months, it's going to be, again, 0.5 grams per each. 1 to 3 years, it's going to be 0.7 grams for males and females. For 4 to 8 years, it's going to be 0.9 grams for males and females. For 9 to 13 years, it's going to be 1.2 grams recommended for males and 1 gram recommended for females. And then for 14 to 18 years, for males, it's 1.6. For females, it's 1.1. And then for pregnancy, it's 1.4. Lactation, they recommend 1.3. For 19 to 50-year-olds, for males, again, 1.6. Females, again, 1.1. And then pregnancy, again, 1.4. Lactation, 1.3. And then 51 years and older, males, again, 1.6. Females, again, 1.1. So it's once you 14 and up, it stays pretty consistent, which makes sense too. And then we'll just talk about some sources of omega-3s. So here's just a table, again, from the NIH. I'm not going to go through all these, but we can just look. So salmon, as we talked about, has 1.24 grams of DHA and 0.59 grams of EPA. I guess there's mayonnaise here, 1 tablespoon, that has 0.74 grams of ALA, but no DHA or EPA. Shrimp cooked, 3 ounces, has 0.12 grams of DHA and 0.12 grams of EPA. Then just let's look at a chicken breast roasted, 3 ounces, that has 0.02 grams of DHA and 0.01 gram of EPA. So I think it's, again, just important to kind of know with every nutrition aspect we discussed today, just knowing what the recommended is and how much of each food, like what are good sources for those so that you can meet your recommendations. Because yes, there are supplements, but if you can, nutrition is always going to be better. Like getting all this from food is always going to be better than getting it from supplements, but supplements are always an option too. But you should talk to like a healthcare professional if you're thinking about supplements. So what is casein? Casein is the main protein found in dairy products such as milk, cheese, yogurt, and ice cream, but can be a factor in other foods that are dairy substitutes like non-dairy creamer and margarine. And there's, I think, if I remember correctly, it's like different aspects of casein. So there's A1 beta casein, and that is milk from breeds of cows that originate usually in Northern Europe and is going to be high in A1 beta casein. And then for A2 beta casein, the milk that is high in A2 beta casein is mainly going to be found in breeds that originate, like cows from breeds that originated in the Channel Islands in southern France. And there is research that suggests that A1 proteins may be harmful to the gut in ways that A2 proteins are not. And researchers found that when subjects drank milk containing A1 protein, they ended up having more gastrointestinal inflammation. Their thinking was slower and they made more errors on an information processing test. So that's just something to be aware of, I guess. Just something to think about.
So next we'll talk a little bit about casein and mental health. And we're going to be going over this brief part of a study from the NCBI. And so this shows gluten-free, casein-free diets in children with ASD. So there's increasing research into the effectiveness of the GFCF diet in children diagnosed with ASD. Several systemic reviews of GFCF diet studies in ASD have appeared. However, the number of high-quality RCTs is too small for drawing firm conclusions at this point, and there are no meta-analyses available. Overall, the findings with regard to GFCF diet's effects in ASD are mixed. So several studies suggest no effect of this diet in ASD. For instance, a recent study testing the effects of a GFCF diet in children with ASD involving a double-blind placebo-controlled challenge phase did not demonstrate positive effects on measures of physiological functioning, behavioral problems, or ASD symptoms. However, children with known gastrointestinal disorder were excluded, which could have weakened any potential effects. In fact, there is research suggesting that gastrointestinal issues might go together with ASD, behavioral symptoms, and reactions to gluten and casein. So 2 RCTs investigated GFCF diet's effects in ASD by following children with ASD for 1 year, and the data demonstrated positive effects on the GFCF diet on ASD trait measures. However, the outcome measure was based on unblinded caregivers' reports, and the studies didn't control for contaminant treatments that the children may have received while being enrolled in these studies. Furthermore, the attrition rate was nearly a quarter in one of the studies, which was not taken into account in the analysis. And then there's the elimination diets in children with ADHD. So the effectiveness of food additives exclusion diet as treatment for ADHD has been investigated in a number of studies. Only some studies additionally eliminated food items containing natural salicylates as part of a broader diet, such as Feingold diet or Kaiser permanent diet. A meta-analysis with a focus on the effectiveness of such elimination diets in ADHD across 20 studies, including 794 participants, found a small effect based on parent reports, 0.18, that decreased to 0.12 when taking into account possible publication bias. The effects based on teachers' reports and observer measures were not significant. However, pooling the data of a limited number of high-quality studies for analyses in this meta-analysis demonstrated small effects on teacher ratings and neurocognitive attentional tests. In another meta-analysis focusing exclusively on ADHD outcomes and more critically addressed assessment blinding issues, 8 studies, including 294 participants, reported an effect size of 0.32 for the most proximal assessment and 0.42 for the probably blinded assessments. It's important to note, though, that the effects of this meta-analysis may be limited to children with ADHD who have a sensitivity to food colors, as the participants were often pre-selected on the basis of a suspected sensitivity to food colors during the elimination phase of the diet. Furthermore, rather than an increase in the effect size, additional analysis using only trials with low or no co-medication to exclude the impact of effective medication led to a reduction in the effective size to a non-significant level. So Stevenson et al. Reported that high-quality studies showed an effect size of 0.21 and 0.22 food color elimination, However, these studies were not restricted to children diagnosed with ADHD. So it's been suggested that the effect of food color elimination on behavior is probably not limited to children with ADHD, but it also applies to hyperactive behavior in children more generally. So with regard to oligoantigenic diets, the effectiveness of the elimination phase has been demonstrated in several randomized clinical trials with patients with ADHD. Let's see here. So taken together, it remains inconclusive whether elimination diets are effective as a treatment for children with ASD and ADHD. So far, the evidence for GFCF diets as an effective treatment for children with ASD is weak, but it might be a beneficial intervention for a subset of children with ASD, particularly for those with comorbid gastrointestinal problems. The observed effects for food additives exclusion diets in children with ADHD are small and may not be specific for children with ADHD, although few-select studies use most proximal assessment demonstrated large effects of oligoantigenic diets in children with ADHD. An overall small effect of this diet was shown by other studies using probably blinded assessments. So it remains unknown whether children will have a consolidated diet after the elimination phase of the oligoantigenic diet. So this question calls for studies that include food challenges or reintroduction phase in the study design. Double-blind placebo-controlled challenges or reintroduction phases after positive reactions to eliminations are useful for further investigations to test the effects of food items in a systemic and controlled way. Studies that assess the long-term effectiveness are necessary to draw conclusions about elimination diet's effects in children with ADHD and ASD. So finally, contrary to the most aforementioned work, future studies should adopt the gold standard for clinical trials. So that being high-quality randomized controlled trials with blinded raters for the primary outcome.
Okay. And then we'll move on to aged, fermented, and cultured foods. So fermented foods like plain yogurt with active cultures and kimchi are a great source of live bacteria that can enhance healthy gut function and decrease anxiety. Potentially. They have been shown to improve human cognitive function in some studies, and they may protect the brain in animals, improving memory and slowing cognitive decline. And there are 3 potential effects that they think are how this is happening. So chemical byproducts of intestinal bacteria and bioactive peptides may protect the nervous system. The changing gut bacteria may suppress the stress response through the HPA axis. And then neurotransmitters and brain tissue builders, such as brain-derived neurotrophic factor, gamma-aminobutyric acid, and serotonin may be increased too.
So with fermented foods and mental health, with anxiety, fermented foods that contain probiotics may have a protective effect against social anxiety symptoms for those at a higher genetic risk. And there's also another study from the NLM. This is association between consumption of fermented food and food-derived prebiotics with cognitive performance, depressive and anxiety symptoms, and psychiatrically healthy medical students under psychological stress. And basically, so the conclusion here really quick, under psychological stress in medical students, consumption of fermented food and food-derived prebiotics appears to be not associated with cognitive performance. High intake of fermented food but not food-derived prebiotics may be associated with severity of depressive and anxiety symptoms. The safety of fermented food in this regard, therefore, requires further clarification.
And then we're going to talk a little bit about just dairy with diet. So if you were interested in like trying it out. There is milk available that only has A2 casein proteins, and then sheep and goat milk is generally A2 milk. You can also try like nut milk and nut milk yogurts if you want to attempt to avoid casein. See if that helps you. And then probiotic rich yogurt is also good with the fermented foods that we talked about, having the good bacteria for you. And it's just important to know that when you do like heat treatment, so for like yogurt covered raisins, how they have to heat that ends up killing the good bacteria. So then you could still eat them obviously if you want, but that just won't have the same effects as eating like yogurt that hasn't been heated or warmed up, I guess. Some other sources of fermented foods include kombucha, miso, tempeh, TEMPEH, and apple cider vinegar. And then you can also ferment foods, so like carrots, cauliflower, green beans, radishes, and broccoli. And then I just have here from the USDA My Plate, and it just kind of tells you. So here we have a table that just shows daily recommendation. So how much dairy you should be, or how much dairy is recommended to get daily. And it has toddlers, children, girls, boys, women, men, and then different age ranges and then cups. And then on that also we have cups of dairy table. So it shows amount that counts as 1 cup in the dairy group, and that has milk, yogurt, and cheese. So you guys can glance at that. That was kind of all we had on dairy.
All right, so what is gluten? Gluten is a structural protein. It's naturally found in certain cereal grains, although gluten often only refers to wheat proteins. In medical literature, it refers to the combination of prolamine and glutenin proteins naturally occurring in all grains that have been proved capable of triggering celiac disease. These include any species of wheat, such as common wheat, durum, spelt, corazon, emmer, and incum, barley, rye, and some cultivars, as well as any cross hybrids of these grains, such as triticale. Gluten makes up 75 to 85% of the total protein in bread wheat. So gluten can trigger adverse inflammatory, immunological, and autoimmune reactions in some people. The spectrum of gluten-related disorders includes celiac disease in 1 to 2% of the general population, non-celiac gluten sensitivity in 0.5 to 13% of the general population, as well as dermatitis, herpetoformitis, gluten ataxia, and other neurological disorders. These disorders are treated by a gluten-free diet.
And since we're talking about gluten, we're just going to briefly talk about celiac disease. Celiac disease is a chronic multiple organ autoimmune disorder primarily affecting the small intestine caused by the ingestion of wheat, barley, rye, oats, and derivatives that appears in genetically predisposed people of all ages. Celiac disease is not only a gastrointestinal disease because it may involve several organs and cause an extensive variety of non-gastrointestinal symptoms, and most importantly, it may be apparently asymptomatic. Many asymptomatic people become accustomed to living with a chronic bad health status as if that were normal, but they are able to recognize that they actually had symptoms related to celiac disease after starting a gluten-free diet, and improvement occurs. Untreated celiac disease may lead to malabsorption, or may cause malabsorption, reduced quality of life, iron deficiency, osteoporosis, and increased risk of intestinal lymphomas and greater mortality. Celiac disease is associated with some other autoimmune diseases such as diabetes mellitus type 1, thyroiditis, gluten ataxia, psoriasis,
Vitiligo.
vitiligo, autoimmune hepatitis, dermatitis herpetiformis, primary sclerosing cholangitis, and more. Celiac disease with classic symptoms, which include gastrointestinal manifestations such as chronic diarrhea and abdominal distension, malabsorption, loss of appetite, and impaired growth, is currently the least common presentation form of the disease and affects predominantly small children, generally younger than 2 years of age. Celiac disease with non-classic symptoms is the most common clinical type and occurs in older children over 2 years old, adolescents, and adults. It is characterized by milder or even absent gastrointestinal symptoms and a wide spectrum of non-intestinal manifestations that can involve any organ of the body and very frequently may be completely asymptomatic both in children, at least in 43% of those cases, and adults.
So, with gluten and mental health, with ADHD, there is a well-established link between it and gluten intolerance or celiac disease. There's a study that found that people who had celiac disease were more likely to have ADHD, and a gluten-free diet improved their symptoms after the initial 6-month period. The association between non-celiac gluten sensitivity and ADHD isn't conclusive by any means. There's various studies that point to a connection between the two.
And then with anxiety, being on a gluten-free diet is less helpful in reducing anxiety for women with celiac disease than it is for men.
In adolescent celiac disease, patients had significantly lower tryptophan concentrations than in their blood. And we're going to discuss tryptophan when we discuss supplements, but tryptophan has been linked with mood, basically.
And then 3 months after patients started a gluten-free diet, some researchers found a significant decrease in patients' psychiatric symptoms compared to their baseline condition, coinciding with significantly decreased celiac disease activity and prolactin levels, and with significant increase in L-tyrosine, L-tryptophan, and other amino acids. In certain individuals, gluten-free diets can help the body increase levels of the precursors to make serotonin.
Now, you might be thinking that gluten sounds kind of scary right now, but there are some benefits of gluten as well. So, a study with over 100,000 participants who did not have celiac disease was conducted in 2017. The researchers did not find an association between long-term dietary gluten consumption nor a risk for heart disease. And findings also suggest that due to the potential reduced consumption of whole grains, non-celiac people avoiding gluten can possibly increase their risk of heart disease. So whole grain consumption has been linked to improving health outcomes by many studies. Significantly lowered rates of stroke and heart disease, development of type 2 diabetes, and death from all causes were all at their lowest risk when measured in groups who ate 2 to 3 servings of whole grains per day. And this was the highest intake of whole grains that was measured by these researchers. This is in comparison with the values measured in groups who ate less than 2 servings daily. This was the lowest grain intake measurement. But just keep in mind that these benefits don't always outweigh the issues caused by gluten intolerance. And basically, when you have a gluten intolerance, the body sees gluten as a toxin and attacks it, and that results in increased inflammation.
And then we're just going to briefly mention diet here too. So foods that have gluten are like whole grains, so it could be bread, pizza, pasta, processed foods, even alcohol. And then for gluten-free, there's usually like foods that are labeled that they're gluten-free. So I have a mini article here from the FDA about gluten and food labeling. So here's the section that I wanted to go over. Foods that can be labeled as gluten-free. So whether a food is manufactured to be free of gluten or by nature is free of gluten, it may bear a gluten-free labeling claim if it meets all FDA requirements for gluten-free food. Some foods and beverages, such as bottled spring water, fruits, vegetable, and eggs, are naturally gluten-free. However, because a gluten-free claim isn't required to be on a food package, it may not appear even if the food is in fact gluten-free. So, gluten-free labeling, what it looks like. Regulation doesn't require manufacturers to place foods gluten-free claim in any specific location, so manufacturers may choose where they place that gluten-free claim as long as it doesn't interfere with mandatory labeling information and meets regulatory requirements. And I think they have here, so their regulation of FDA's regulation of gluten-free claims. While gluten-free is a voluntary claim that manufacturers may choose to use, FDA's gluten-free food labeling rules specifies what the claim actually means on the food label. Accordingly, manufacturers that label their foods as free of gluten are responsible for using that claim in an accurate and not misleading manner, and for complying with all requirements established by the regulation and enforced by FDA. So the rule specifies, among other criteria, that any foods that carry that label, gluten-free, no gluten, free of gluten, or without gluten, must contain less than 20 parts per million of gluten. This level is the lowest that can be reliably detected in foods using scientifically validated analytical methods. Other countries and international bodies use these same criteria, as most people with celiac disease can tolerate foods with very small amounts of gluten. Before the regulation was issued in 2013, there were no U.S. standards or definitions for the food industry to use in labeling products as gluten-free. This left many consumers, especially those with health concerns, unsure of whether a food was free of gluten. And then besides the limit of gluten to 20 ppm, the rule permits labeling of food gluten-free if the food does not contain an ingredient that is any type of wheat, rye, barley, or crossbreeds of these grains, an ingredient derived from these grains that has not been processed to remove gluten, or if it is an ingredient derived from these grains that has been processed to remove gluten but results in the food containing more than 20 ppm of gluten. And so for compliance, manufacturers had until August of 2014 to bring their labels into compliance. So that is passed, so that should be, I think they should all be compliant by now. And then in 2017, FDA released the results of an analysis of 702 samples from more than 250 products labeled gluten-free. Only one of those products did not comply with the labeling requirements. So it appears that for the most part, when something is labeled gluten-free, it meets FDA's requirements. So if for whatever reason you are trying out a gluten-free diet, then you should, like, those foods should be labeled so that you know what they are. And that was what we had on gluten. So what is fiber? So dietary fiber, or roughage, is the portion of plant-derived food that cannot be completely broken down by human digestive enzymes. Dietary fibers are diverse in chemical composition and can be grouped generally by their solubility, viscosity, and fermentability, which affect how fibers are processed in the body. A dietary fiber has two main components, soluble fiber and insoluble fiber, which are components of plant-based foods such as legumes, whole grains and cereals, vegetables, fruits, and nuts or seeds. Dietary fiber consists of non-starch polysaccharides and other plant components such as cellulose, resistant starch, resistant dextrins, inulin, lignins, chitins, which is in fungi, pectins, beta-glucans, and oligosaccharides. Dietary fiber is a broad category of food ingredients that are non-digestible by our natural gut enzymes. When dietary fiber can be broken down by bacteria, it is called fermentable.
So why is fiber important? A diet and regular fiber consumption is generally associated with supporting health and lowering risk of several diseases. Different fibers help in different ways. So we have bulking fibers such as cellulose and hemicellulose, including psyllium. These absorb and hold water, promoting regularity. So these can include like brown rice, wheat bread, wheat bran, raisin bran, black beans, kidney beans, almonds, oranges, blueberries, apples, bananas, dates, prunes, chickpeas, Brussels sprouts, carrots, and green beans. They're all a great source of bulking fiber, and these will add more bulk to your stool. The viscous fibers, such as beta-glucan and psyllium, thicken the fecal mass. So you can find viscous fiber in plants like apricots, sweet potatoes, oats, beans, Brussels sprouts, and asparagus. And adding these to your diet can help you eat less without noticing, and it could potentially, in some people, lead to weight loss. It also helps slow down food moving through your digestive system. And these have been shown to help promote control of blood sugar levels, reduce the risk of heart disease, improve regularity, reduce risk of colon cancer, improve digestion, boost immunity, and lower cholesterol. And finally, we have fermentable fibers, such as resistant starch, xanthan gum, and inulin, and these feed the bacteria and microbiota of the large intestine. And they're metabolized to yield short-chain fatty acids, which have diverse roles in gastrointestinal health. So examples of fermentable fibers include barley, oats, onions, chicory root, bananas, Jerusalem artichoke, and leeks. These fibers are more easily digestible by gut bacteria and thus are able to be used as fuel. They can help to increase the number and balance of good gut bacteria. These good gut bacteria also produce short-chain fatty acids that have strong health benefits. Most of these fibers are soluble, but there are some insoluble fibers that can function in this way. And most fermentable fibers are soluble, but yeah, I just said that. Okay. One of the byproducts of these fibers is gas, which can cause flatulence and stomach discomfort, especially for those not accustomed to eating a lot of fiber. So insoluble fiber is associated with reduced risk of diabetes, but the mechanism by which this is achieved is unknown. So one type of insoluble dietary fiber, resistant starch, may increase insulin sensitivity in healthy people and type 2 diabetics and in individuals with insulin resistance, possibly contributing to reduced risk of type 2 diabetes. In addition to lower risk of death from heart disease, adequate consumption of fiber-containing foods, especially grains, was also correlated with reduced incidence of infectious and respiratory illnesses, and particularly among males, reduced risk of cancer-related death. So diets rich in dietary fiber may reduce the risk of depression, anxiety, and stress. And dietary fiber can also decrease inflammation throughout the body, including the brain.
And now we're just gonna briefly mention kind of diet with like what foods have fiber. And we talked about a couple already too, so we'll just add some more on here. Rich dietary fiber, you can think of beans, brown rice, berries, bran, and baked potato with the skin on. With baked potatoes, you just want to be careful not to, as always, moderation is important with everything, just because potatoes are high in carbs. And then other high fiber foods that you may consider are pears, apples, bananas, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, carrots, artichokes, almonds, walnuts, amaranth, oats, buckwheat, and pearl barley. And then I have this is from, I think, I guess Dietary Guidelines for Americans, which is a government organization, DGA. I didn't know that was a thing, but cool. So this is food sources of dietary fiber. So I was just gonna go over a couple, just say a couple here. So under standard portions for grains, tortillas, whole wheat, 1 ounce, which is a standard portion, has 88 calories and 2.8 grams of fiber. For fruit, we can just look at a pear. So one medium would be the standard. That would have 103 calories and 5.5 grams of fiber. And then there's also smaller portions. So again, we can just look at tortillas whole wheat. So a half ounce would have 44 calories and 1.4 grams of fiber. And then again, I think if I can find it, we'll just look at pear again. Yep. So half a medium pear would have 52 calories and give you 2.8 grams of fiber. So if you were ever kind of wondering, if you wanted to see, because we mentioned different foods that are high in fiber, but if you ever wanted to see the actual fiber, like gram amount in something that you wanted to eat, then this website, again, Dietary Guidelines for Americans, the website is dietaryguidelines.gov/resources/2020-2025-dietary-guidelines-online-materials. It's fine. You guys, it'll be just, I bet if you Google food sources of dietary fiber, dietary guidelines for Americans, I bet you'll find it. But yes, so those are some. It's a good resource though if you wanted to kind of look and see, because I would probably say fiber is something that is also just probably not enriched in the Western diet. So getting good fiber in your diet is something that we can all definitely try to do. So what is caffeine? Caffeine is a central nervous system stimulant of the methylxanthine class. It is mainly used recreationally as a cognitive enhancer, increasing alertness and attentional performance. Caffeine acts by blocking binding of adenosine to the adenosine A1 receptor, which enhances release of the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. Adenosine promotes the sleep drive, or a person's need for sleep. Research shows adenosine also plays a role in the immune system and can reduce inflammatory responses. Receptors for adenosine have also been found in the body's circulatory, respiratory, and urinary systems. Acetylcholine intervenes in numerous physiological functions, such as regulating cardiac contractions and blood pressure, intestinal peristalsis, glandular secretion, etc. Typically, acetylcholine is an excitatory mediator.
So where does caffeine come from? It's found in the seeds, fruits, nuts, or leaves of a number of plants native to Africa, East Asia, and South America. Best known source of caffeine is the coffee bean, the seed of the coffee plant. And to make these drinks, caffeine is extracted by steeping the plant product in water, a process called infusion.
And we're also going to talk briefly about the safety of caffeine. Caffeine is the world's most widely consumed psychoactive drug. Unlike most other psychoactive substances, caffeine remains largely unregulated and legal in nearly all parts of the world. Caffeine is also an outlier, as its use is seen as socially acceptable in most cultures and even encouraged in others. Caffeine is classified by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration as generally recognized as safe. Toxic doses, which is over 10 grams per day for an adult, are much higher than the typical dose of under 500 milligrams per day. The European Food Safety Authority reported that up to 400 milligrams of caffeine per day, which is around 5.7 milligrams per kilogram of body mass per day, does not raise safety concerns for non-pregnant adults, while intakes up to 200 milligrams per day for pregnant and lactating women do not raise safety concerns for the fetus or the breastfed infants. And A cup of coffee contains 80 to 175 milligrams of caffeine, depending on what bean or seed is used, how it is roasted. Darker roasts have less caffeine, and how it is prepared, whether that's drip, percolation, or espresso. And thus it requires roughly 50 to 100 ordinary cups of coffee to reach the toxic dose. However, pure powdered caffeine, which is available as a dietary supplement, can be lethal in tablespoon-sized amounts.
So we'll go over some health effects of caffeine. Caffeine has both positive and negative health effects. It can treat and prevent the premature infant breathing disorders, bronchopulmonary dysplasia of prematurity, and apnea of prematurity. Extensive research indicates that having 3 to 4 cups of coffee daily may help you to live longer, and it may protect you from heart disease, cancer, and neurologic and metabolic and liver conditions too. Caffeine citrate is on the WHO model list of essential medicines. It may confer a modest protective effect against some diseases, including Parkinson's disease. Some people experience sleep disruption or anxiety if they consume caffeine, but others show little disturbance. And caffeine can cause overexcitability. It can disrupt sleep considerably. Excess caffeine in your diet can precipitate or worsen anxiety. Overstimulates regions of the brain that process threat. Caffeine activated the midbrain periaqueductal gray matter, a brain region that is typically activated when a predator is closing in on you. Caffeine also shuts down a brain region that typically helps you regulate your anxiety. So evidence of a risk during pregnancy is equivocal. Some authorities recommend that pregnant women limit caffeine to the equivalent of 2 cups of coffee per day or less. Caffeine can produce a mild form of drug dependence associated with withdrawal symptoms such as sleeplessness, headache, and irritability when an individual stops using caffeine after repeated daily intake. So you may have heard about caffeine-related deaths in the news in the past. So really quick, we're just going to go over this section. This study is caffeine-related deaths, manner of deaths, and category risks from National Library of Medicine. And let me just find the part here. Caffeine-related fatalities. So despite the recent policy of sale restrictions of caffeine tablets, which was introduced in 2004 in several countries, we've identified an increase in caffeine-related deaths in the last years. This is just table 1 for all the different fatalities. So our study allowed us to identify the manner of death as suicide for 36 people, accidental for 27, intentional poisoning for 2, and uncertain for 27. Routes of administration of caffeine were oral, so pills, powder, liquid, in 46 cases, intravenous in 3 cases, and not reported in the remaining 43 cases. Unintentional caffeine abuse due to excessive intake of caffeine is relatively frequent and responsible for classic clinical manifestations of overstimulation. However, death due to caffeine intoxication is rare, and case reports of fatalities from caffeine toxicity are relatively infrequent. We've identified 28 cases, or 29%, among the 92 lethal cases described in the literature in which death was attributed to accidental causes. So the majority of fatalities were related to the ingestion of a great amount of over-the-counter caffeine products. These tend to be weight loss supplements that are frequently used and perceived as safe, but can be toxic and linked to serious health complications. So just table 2 here really quick just shows the accidental causes among caffeine-related deaths. 10 non-reported, 9 over-the-counter caffeine products, 3 errors in hospital medication, 2 drug abuse, 2 recreational use, and 1 accidental ingestion by children. So, as a result, the category of individuals consuming caffeine-containing products for dietary purposes represent a group at risk for severe intoxications, potentially leading to decease. Despite cases where consumption of caffeine has accidentally led to the death and where caffeine was taken with suicidal purposes, we recognize three categories of individuals who have often been involved in caffeine-related deaths: athletes, psychiatric patients, and infants. In the latter group, the manner of death is linked to intentional poisoning and child abuse. The low frequency of these categories in other groups has encouraged us to emphasize these aspects. So with ADHD, caffeine was formerly used as a second-line treatment for ADHD. It is considered less effective than methylphenidate or amphetamine, but more so than placebo for children with ADHD. Children, adolescents, and adults with ADHD are more likely to consume caffeine, perhaps as a form of self-medication. A 2011 study demonstrated that tea might be an effective treatment for adult ADHD. According to the NIH, caffeine increases striatal dopamine D2, D3 receptor availability in the human brain. So D3 appears more related to the basal ganglia and structures involved with motoric behavior, while D2 is associated with regions associated with cognitive affective functions.
And at normal doses, caffeine has variable effects on learning and memory, but it generally improves reaction time, wakefulness, concentration, and motor coordination. The amount of caffeine needed to produce these effects varies from person to person, depending on body size and degree of tolerance. Desired effects arise approximately 1 hour after consumption, and desired effects of a moderate dose usually subside after about 3 or 4 hours. And a systematic review and meta-analysis from 2014 found that concurrent caffeine with L-theanine use has synergistic psychoactive effects that promote alertness, attention, and task switching. These effects are most pronounced during the first hour post-dose. And then we have an article, or kind of I'm going to call it an article, from the Department of Defense Dietary Supplement Resource, Operation Supplement Safety. This is called Caffeine for Performance. And we already kind of talked about like how much caffeine is safe and how much you should use for performance, because again, that's going to vary per person. But I wanted to go over the part that says, how can I tell if my supplement contains caffeine? So if your supplement is marketed for weight loss, energy, or pre-workout, it probably contains caffeine. To see if it does, look at the supplement facts panel. Caffeine and caffeine anhydrous are the terms that appear most often on dietary supplement labels, but they're basically the same thing. Other names you might see include caffeine citrate, dicaffeine malate, and pterostilbene caffeine. These combine caffeine with other substances, which could be sodium citrate, malic acid, and pterostilbene, respectively. Because the caffeine is combined with other substances, the amount of caffeine is less than the ingredient amount on the label. For example, caffeine citrate is about 50% caffeine. So if a label lists 50 milligrams of caffeine citrate, then it contributes about 25 milligrams of caffeine. Other times, the caffeine may be hidden in ingredients such as cocoa, coffee or coffea, green coffee bean, guarana, cola nut, methylxanthine. It might just be labeled under tea, trimethylxanthine, xanthine, or yerba mate. Sometimes the total amount of caffeine is listed on the supplement facts panel. If the caffeine is part of a proprietary blend, you might not be able to tell how much caffeine is in a serving. The amount might be listed elsewhere on the container or not listed at all, so be sure to read the entire product label. And then we're going to move on to diet a little bit. That kind of was a little bit of diet, but I have another kind of chart here from the USDA, and it is just a list of different foods, drinks, and how much caffeine they have per serving. So we can just look here for like a beverage, energy drink, Rockstar, sugar free. The serving is 8 fluid ounces, and that will have 79 milligrams of caffeine. And then there is milk, chocolate, fluid, commercial whole with added vitamin A and vitamin D. And 1 cup of that will have 2 milligrams of caffeine. And then there's like candy. So like Nestle Butterfinger bar, 1 serving, which is a 2.1 ounce bar, will end up having 1 milligram of caffeine. So if you wanted to kind of look again, we should be able to have them on there. But it is United States Department of Agriculture, Agricultural Research Service, and it is USDA National Nutrient Database for Standard Reference Legacy, nutrients, caffeine, milligram. And if you want to cut down on caffeine but still crave the taste of coffee, you can always switch to decaf, but decaf does still contain small amounts of caffeine, just so you're aware. And then always use caffeine wisely. And I've seen recommendations to generally, I think I saw you want to kind of stop having any caffeine about 6 hours before bed, just so it doesn't mess with your sleep. So that could be like 3 p.m. for some people, but it's going to really depend on like your sleep schedule. So really just trying not to have caffeine approximately 6 hours before bed. And that's gonna be variable too. Like, and if everyone's gonna be different with that, but that is what has been shown to help if caffeine may be keeping you from sleeping. So that was what we had on caffeine. So we're gonna start with vitamins here. And vitamins are essential for the formation and synthesis of neurotransmitters and the metabolism of brain lipids, protect the brain from toxins, boost immunity, and regulate many chemicals that make us more or less anxious. So we're going to go to vitamin B first. And it has been shown before that a vitamin B complex may help reduce anxiety, possibly by reducing oxidative stress in the brain. We're going to talk about a couple of the different vitamin Bs. So we'll start with folate, which is B9, and vitamin B12. So deficiency in B12 results in a folate deficiency, which can ultimately contribute to loss of brain cells, chiefly those located in the hippocampus, which they call hippocampal atrophy. And that has been associated with depression. The hippocampus is a critical brain structure that plays an important role in learning and memory. Some studies have also demonstrated that the higher one's folate level, the lower one's level of depression. Folate may also affect serotonin synthesis. And then vitamin B9, which is folate, deficiency of folate has been associated with chronic fatigue syndrome. It is involved in cell development throughout the body, and macrocytic anemia is commonly caused by folate deficiency.
All right. Next, we'll talk about thiamine, which is B1, and pyridoxine, which is B6. So these help the brain produce and synthesize neurotransmitters involved in mood regulation. Vitamin B1, decreased levels of vitamin B1 can result in altered mitochondrial activity. Neurons have high energy requirements, which means they are especially vulnerable to a thiamine deficit. Up to 250 milligrams of thiamine has been shown to be effective for anxiety. And then with vitamin B6, it is low in patients with chronic fatigue syndrome and disruption of the connections among brain cells. There is a disruption of the connections among brain cells, and this decreases efficient processing of information.
And then we're going to talk about vitamin A briefly. Vitamin A facilitates proper brain function, such as the growth and adaptation of neurons. Deficiency of vitamin A may result in shrinkage of certain brain areas, disturbing how the brain responds to stress. There was a study that found vitamin A can significantly improve fatigue and depression in multiple sclerosis patients, but too much retinoic acid, which is a metabolite of vitamin A, has been associated with depression and suicide. But that is typically far beyond what you're going to eat in a healthy, varied diet. But it's still good to just be aware of that so that you're not taking a bunch of vitamin A.
So then with the vitamin C, it's responsible for the regulation of neurotransmitter synthesis. It's a crucial antioxidant, and fatigue is common if vitamin C levels are low.
And then vitamin D. Studies have demonstrated that adults with depression and anxiety have lower blood levels of vitamin D. Vitamin D is increasingly recognized as a necessary substance called a neurosteroid, which crosses the blood-brain barrier and enters brain cells. It can decrease inflammation or it can decrease inflammation and toxic destruction of cells and controls the release of nerve growth factor, which is essential for survival of hippocampal and cortical neurons. The hippocampus plays a crucial role in providing feedback to the HPA axis when there is stress, and it is also intricately connected to the amygdala. About 80% of our vitamin D comes from exposing our skin to direct sunlight, so sunlight streaming through our windows does not have the same effect since glass absorbs all ultraviolet B radiation. And vitamin D deficiency is occurring in epidemic proportions worldwide. Not having high enough levels can lead to inflammation and brain injury. And it also helps nerve growth and assists in the production of brain tissue. Vitamin D does. But something also just to keep in mind with thinking about getting vitamin D is skin cancer risk. It's important to know your risk factors and be safe. And there is little evidence that sunscreen decreases vitamin D concentration when used in real life settings, suggesting that concerns about vitamin D should not negate skin cancer prevention advice.
So next, we're going to talk about some minerals. And the first one we'll go over is iron. It helps make up the covering that protects neurons and helps control the synthesis of chemicals and chemical pathways involved in mood. A large concentration found in the basal ganglia, the collection of brain cells that have been implicated in depression. In clinical studies, low iron levels and depression have been linked.
And then we'll talk about magnesium. There have been countless studies suggesting that depression is related to magnesium deficiency. Magnesium deficiency is also associated with high anxiety levels. Magnesium supplementation can help, especially if you are vulnerable to anxiety, likely because of the way that magnesium can ease stress responses by changing levels of harmful stress chemicals in the brain. Dietary intake of magnesium is poor in Western populations. 68% of Americans consume inadequate amounts of magnesium. Patients with chronic fatigue syndrome have low magnesium levels, and magnesium decreases inflammation and relaxes the nervous system. But just so you all know, supplements, while they can be effective, it's always important to talk to a healthcare provider and or nutritionist before picking on any supplements, just depending on whatever other health conditions you may have that could be affected by supplements.
Yeah, or if any medications you have can interact with them. So next we'll talk a little bit about potassium. The information's not super clear on potassium, but some studies have shown that higher potassium intake can improve your mood.
And then zinc. So most evidence strongly supports a positive association between zinc deficiency and the risk of depression. Blood zinc concentrations have been shown to be lower in depressed subjects compared to control subjects. Low zinc levels are also a hallmark of chronic fatigue syndrome. And so increasing zinc can improve and prevent fatigue.
So just as a general statement here, like supplements, which can include like over-the-counter vitamins, they're pretty like in their pill form and everything. Like if you're just buying them as a supplement and not eating them in your food. These supplements are pretty loosely regulated, so it's important to do your research on the manufacturer before starting any supplements. We're going to go over the issues with the supplement industry in the next episode, but I just wanted to put that statement out there.
Yes. And then just with vitamins and minerals, we're just going to go over a couple of different sources, I guess, and then also just recommended intake. So these are all going to be from the National Institutes of Health, Office of Dietary Supplements, and we'll just start with vitamin B12. And this is the fact sheet for health professionals. And as always, for all of these, there's also going to be a consumer fact sheet on vitamin B12 if you want to look at that one too. But we're going to be looking at the one for healthcare professionals. So we're just going to look at recommended dietary allowance for vitamin B12 here. They have a little table. So for birth to 6 months, it's going to be 0.4 micrograms regardless of gender. 7 to 12 months is going to be 0.5 mcg regardless of gender. 1 to 3 is 0.9. 4 to 8, it's 1.2. 9 to 13, 1.8. 14 to 18, it's 2.4. But if there's pregnancy, then it jumps up to 2.6, and lactation jumps up to 2.8. And then 19 and older, again, it's 2.4 for regardless of gender, and then pregnancy is going to be 2.6 again, and lactation is 2.8. And then we'll just look here at table 2 that show some different foods and then their micrograms per serving. So as we can see, salmon will have 2.6 micrograms of vitamin B12 per serving. Milk, 2% milk fat, 1 cup of that has 1.3. 1.5 ounces of cheddar cheese has 0.5. And then 1 medium banana has 0. So the bottom ones have 0. So those are some vitamin B12. So then we'll move on to folate, which was vitamin B9, I believe, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So again, we'll look here at the recommended dietary allowance. So birth to 6 months, that's going to be 65 mcg regardless of gender. 7 to 12 months, it's going to be 80. 1 to 3 years, it's 150. 4 to 8, it's 200. 9 to 13, it's 300. And then 14 to 18 and 19 and older is both 400. And then for pregnancy, 14 and greater is 600. And then lactation, it's 500. And then we'll look at this little table here, table 2, that has food. And again, so 4 spears of boiled asparagus is going to have 89 micrograms. Micrograms. Cooked spaghetti, half a cup is 74. Half a cup of a raw sliced avocado, 59. And then we'll look at orange juice. 3/4 cup of orange juice is going to have 35 micrograms. And then we'll move on to thiamine. So recommended dietary allowances for thiamine. Birth to 6 months is going to be 0.2 milligrams. 7 to 12 months is 0.3 milligrams. 1 to 3 years, 0.5. 4 to 8, 0.6. 9 to 13, 0.9. 14 to 18, so 1.2 milligrams for males, 1 milligram for females. And pregnancy is going to be 1.4 milligrams, and lactation is 1.4 milligrams. 19 to 50, it's 1.2 milligrams for males and 1.1 milligrams for females. And then for people 51 and older, 1.2 for males again and 1.1 for females. And then we have foods again. We'll look at that table. So 1 plain enriched English muffin has 0.3 milligrams. Bread whole wheat, 1 slice has 0.1. And then low-fat plain yogurt, 1 cup has 0.1. And then we'll move on to vitamin A. So recommended dietary allowance, birth to 6 months is 400 micrograms, regardless of gender. 7 to 12 months is 500. 1 to 3 years is 300. 4 to 8 years is 400. 9 to 13 is 600. 14 to 18 years is 900 micrograms for males, 700 micrograms for females, and that's going to continue throughout the rest of your life. And then for pregnancy, so if a 14 to 18-year-old is pregnant, it's going to be 750 microgram recommendation, but 19 to 50, it jumps to 770. And then for lactation, 14 to 18 is 1200, 19 to 50 is 1300. And then we'll just look at some foods here again. So one whole sweet potato baked in skin is going to have 1403. Raw carrots, half a cup, is 459. And then half a cup of red raw sweet peppers is going to have 117. Then we'll move on to vitamin C. So recommended intakes there, if 0 to 6 months is 40 milligrams, regardless of gender. 7 to 12 months is 50 milligrams. 1 to 3 years is 15 milligrams. 4 to 8 years is 25 milligrams. 9 to 13 years is 45. 14 to 18 years is 75 milligrams for males, 65 milligrams for females, 80 milligrams for pregnancy, and 150 milligrams for lactation. And then 19 years and older is going to be 90 milligrams for males, 75 milligrams for females, 85 milligrams for pregnancy, and 120 milligrams for lactation. And individuals who smoke require 35 milligrams per day more vitamin C than non-smokers. And then we will also just briefly look here again at foods. So orange juice, 3/4 of a cup of orange juice will give you 93 milligrams. One medium kiwi fruit will give you 64 milligrams. And then half a cup of raw broccoli will give you 39 milligrams. We'll look at vitamin D. Here we go. Recommended dietary allowance for vitamin D. So for 0 to 12 months, it's going to be 10 micrograms or 400 IU. For 1 to 13 years, it's going to be 15 micrograms or 600 IU. 14 to 18, it's going to be 15 micrograms for even pregnancy and lactation is also 15 micrograms or 600 IU. And then 19 to 50 is also 15 for everything or 600 IU. 51 to 70 years is also 15. And then greater than 70 years, it's going to be 20 micrograms or 800 IU. So then it goes up a little bit once you get 70 or older. And then vitamin D content of selected foods in table 3. We'll look here. So milk, 2% milk fat, vitamin D fortified, 1 cup will give you 2.9 micrograms, which is 120 international units IU. 1 large scrambled egg will give you 1.1 micrograms or 44 IU. And 1.5 ounces of cheddar cheese will give you 0.4 micrograms or 17 IU. And then we'll look at iron. So recommended dietary allowance for iron, birth to 6 months is 0.27 milligrams, regardless of gender. 7 to 12 months is 11 milligrams. 1 to 3 years is 7 milligrams. 4 to 8 years is 10 milligrams. 9 to 13 years is 8 milligrams. 14 to 18 years is going to be 11 milligrams for males, 15 milligrams for females, 27 milligrams for pregnancy, and 10 milligrams for lactation. 19 to 50 years is going to be 8 milligrams for males, 18 milligrams for females, 27 milligrams for pregnancy, and 9 milligrams for lactation. And then 51 years and older, it's going to be 8 milligrams regardless of gender. And then food sources. So let's say you want half a cup of firm tofu, that'll give you 3 milligrams of iron. Or if you want 1 cup of canned white beans, that'll give you 8 milligrams. Or if you want 1 slice of whole wheat bread, that'll give you 1 milligram. Then we'll move on to magnesium. So, recommended dietary allowance for magnesium. Birth to 6 months is going to be 30 milligrams, regardless of gender. 7 to 12 months is 75 milligrams. 1 to 3 years is 80 milligrams. 4 to 8 years is 130 milligrams. 9 to 13 years is 240 milligrams. 14 to 18 years is going to be 410 milligrams for males, 360 milligrams for females, 400 milligrams for pregnancy, and 360 milligrams for lactation. 19 to 30 years is going to be 400 milligrams for males, 310 milligrams for females, 350 milligrams for pregnancy, and 310 milligrams for lactation. 31 to 50, it's 420 milligrams for male, 320 for female, 360 for pregnancy, 320 for lactation. And then 51 years and older, it's going to be 420 for male, 320 for female. And then food sources. So for magnesium, let's say you want 1 ounce of roasted pumpkin seeds, that'll give you 156 milligrams. Or if you want 1 ounce of dry roasted almonds, that'll give you 80 milligrams. Or, maybe some cashews. If you have 1 ounce of dry roasted cashews, you're going to get 74 milligrams of magnesium. And then we'll move on to potassium. So adequate intakes for potassium. Birth to 6 months is going to be 400 milligrams, regardless of gender. 7 to 12 months is 860 milligrams. 1 to 3 years is 2,000 milligrams. 4 to 8 years is 2,300 milligrams. 9 to 13 years is going to be 2,500 milligrams for males, 2,300 milligrams for females. 14 to 18 is going to be 3,000 milligrams for males, 2,300 for female, 2,600 for pregnancy, 2,500 for lactation. 19 to 50 years is 3,400 for male, 2,600 for female, 2,900 for pregnancy, and 2,800 for lactation. And then 51 years and up is 3,400 for male and 2,600 for female. And then some food sources here of potassium. Let's say you want 1 cooked cup of lentils. That's going to give you 731 milligrams. If you want half a cup of raisins, you'll get 618 milligrams. Or if you want 1 medium banana, that'll give you 422 milligrams. And then lastly, for this one, we got zinc. So recommended dietary allowances for zinc is for birth to 6 months, it's going to be 2 milligrams, regardless of gender. 7 to 12 months, it's 3 milligrams. 1 to 3 years is 3 milligrams. 4 to 8 years is 5 milligrams. 9 to 13, 8 milligrams. 14 to 18 is going to be 11 for males, 9 for females, 12 for pregnancy, 13 for lactation. And then 19 years and older is 11 for male, 8 for female, 11 for pregnancy, and 12 for lactation. And then some food sources for zinc. If you want 1 ounce of roasted pumpkin seeds, you're going to get 2.2 milligrams. If you want 1.5 ounces of cheddar cheese, you're going to get 1.5 milligrams. And let's say you want 1 cup of 1% milk. That is going to give you 1 milligram. So those are just a couple of different how much is recommended for the average person and what food sources have each amount, so that you can kind of try to get, because getting vitamins, any of these things that we've talked about today and are going to still talk about, is the best way to get anything is from the food. So if you are able to get it from your food by looking at some of these charts and tables and maybe putting together like a meal plan, that would be the best way to get your nutrients over supplements. And we will actually be talking about supplements next. And as always, as we've been mentioning, anytime that you are considering taking supplements, you are going to want to be in contact with a healthcare professional and or nutritionist when making that decision.
So before we get into some different supplements, I did just want to address some problems within the supplement industry. So many supplements covered by the DSHEA, which was intended to meet the concerns of consumers and manufacturers to help ensure that products are safe and properly labeled, and this includes dietary supplements. But these supplements are still drugs despite their classification, and this is because they can affect the body similar to how prescription drugs do. Some of them can, and we should be regulating all of our drugs with the same strict scrutiny. Unlike drugs recognized as such by the FDA, manufacturers of supplements don't have to show any evidence that their products work. They are required to put the following statement on their labels. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. And yet they're often advertised to do exactly that. So according to many scientific studies, many supplements don't actually work. And if they do work, they still have risks as well as benefits, even if taken exactly as directed. Yet supplements are not required to show that they are safe or effective. Manufacturers of these supplements don't have to tell the FDA about any issues that their products may have, unlike drugs that are regulated by the FDA. It is the responsibility of regulators to show that these problems or that these products aren't safe. So basically, supplements are very loosely regulated, and it's important to do your research on the manufacturer before starting any supplements.
So we are going to talk about a few supplements today, but again, just keep all that in mind as we go over this. So first we're going to be talking about mushrooms. With that, I have a little article here. This is also from Department of Defense Dietary Supplement Resource Operation Supplement Safety, and it is mushrooms and dietary supplements. So mushrooms are a type of fungus grown worldwide and are rich in vitamins, minerals, fiber, antioxidants, and protein. Many different types of mushrooms are found on dietary supplement labels, but most common that you will see are reishi, shiitake, cordyceps sinensis, maitake, cordyceps militaris, lion's mane, chaga, and turkey tail. Regardless of what type they contain, mushroom supplements are marketed for numerous health benefits. Some claims are general, such as promising vitality and immune health. Others are more specific, such as promoting healthy cellular function, enhancing cognitive performance, controlling blood sugar levels, aiding digestion, and supporting a healthy inflammatory response by the liver. Mushrooms used in mushrooms used in dietary supplements are marketed for those numerous health benefits, but there isn't enough scientific evidence to support their safety or use for any specific purpose except as food. When they are used in supplements, they are often in the form of powder or extract. The fruiting body, often mentioned on labels, is the part usually visible above ground, the part you would typically eat as food. The mycelium, also sometimes mentioned on labels, is the root of the mushroom. It can be grown more quickly and easily than the fruiting body. They both contain beneficial chemical components, polysaccharides, glucans, terpenes, etc. However, it remains unclear if mushrooms in the form of dietary supplements deliver the same components or biological effects as when eating mushrooms as food. Mushroom extracts and powders can be produced in a variety of ways. Generally, extracts can be made by boiling fruiting bodies in hot water or alcohol. Powders can be made by grinding up the dried mycelium or fruiting body. The different processing methods and various growing conditions, such as if they were grown in logs, sawdust, liquid, etc., make it difficult to control and standardize the chemical makeup of these mushroom-based ingredients, which can potentially compromise both quality and consistency among batches and products. So, are they safe or effective? Generally, mushrooms as a food are safe to consume, but some types can be poisonous. Consuming toxic mushrooms can result in severe side effects such as nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, liver failure, and in some cases, death. Dietary supplement products shouldn't contain poisonous mushrooms, but without laboratory testing, it is difficult to know for sure. Currently, there isn't enough reliable information available to support the safety, effectiveness, or appropriate use of dietary supplements that contain non-toxic mushrooms. Some dietary supplement labels with mushroom ingredients carry warning statements such as avoid using if you're pregnant, breastfeeding, or anticipate surgery. Side effects reported from using such products include nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, dizziness, skin sensitivity, headache, GI discomfort, and allergic reactions. And are mushrooms prohibited for use? Mushrooms suitable for use as food or dietary supplement ingredients are not prohibited for use by military service members. However, some mushrooms contain the controlled substance psilocybin. In addition, magic mushroom products can contain other plant-based hallucinogens and might not even contain mushrooms. So basically just if you're in the military, obviously you can't use because it's classified as a illegal substance anyway. So, but other mushrooms we'll be talking about, and we've talked about psilocybin before too, so we're not going to be talking about that one today. But then we're going to talk here about reishi. This is from the NIH Medline Plus, and we're just going to say it. So reishi mushroom is a bitter tasting fungus with no proven health benefits. It is thought to have some effects on the immune system. It is used for Alzheimer's disease, cancer, diabetes, cold sores, and many other conditions, but there's no scientific evidence to support these uses. So it is possibly ineffective for high levels of cholesterol or other lipids in the blood. Taking reishi mushroom by mouth doesn't seem to lower cholesterol levels in people with diabetes or high cholesterol. Is it safe? Reishi mushroom is possibly safe when used for up to 1 year. Powdered whole reishi mushroom is possibly safe when used for up to 16 weeks. It can cause dizziness, dry mouth, itching, nausea, stomach upset, and rash. Special precautions are for pregnancy and breastfeeding. There's not enough reliable information to know if it is safe to use when pregnant or breastfeeding, so stay on the safe side and avoid use. For bleeding disorders, high doses of reishi mushroom might increase the risk of bleeding in some people with certain bleeding disorders. And then surgery, high doses might increase the risk of bleeding if someone is about to go into surgery. So they recommend stopping if you are taking reishi mushroom supplements or coffee, tea, whatever it is, to stop at least 2 weeks before scheduled surgery. And then are there interactions with medications? So anti-diabetes drugs, reishi mushrooms might lower blood sugar levels. So taking reishi mushroom along with diabetes might cause blood sugar to drop too low. So you'll just want to make sure, as you should be, that you're anyways, but just monitoring your blood sugar closely. Antihypertensive drugs. So reishi mushroom might lower blood pressure. So if you're taking an antihypertensive or blood pressure lowering medication and taking this supplement, it might lower your blood pressure too much. So again, just keep a very close eye on your blood pressure. And then anticoagulant or antiplatelet drugs. So again, this might cause bleeding, leading to slow blood clotting. So if you're taking this supplement with medications that also slow blood clotting, you might increase the risk of bruising and bleeding. And there's no known interactions with foods. It's typically used, so it's most often been used by adults in doses of 1,400 to 5,400 milligrams by mouth daily, usually in divided doses. And it has also been used in lower doses. So as always, speak with a healthcare provider to find out if what dose may be effective for you, but also just so that they are aware of what you are, and then they can look into like what other medications you are potentially taking to make sure that if you shouldn't take it, that you don't take it.
Okay, and then, so with lion's mane, it's among all culinary mushrooms. It is Hericium erinaceus, most commonly known as lion's mane, and it has been widely reported to have therapeutic activities related to promotion of nerve and brain health. So different compounds isolated from this mushroom, including the expression of neurotropic factors such as nerve growth factors, have been actively studied and reported. Hericenoids were typically found in the fruiting bodies, while arenosines were derived from the mycelia of the mushroom. A previous double-blinded clinical study has shown that oral administration of Herinaceous pruning body was effective in improving mild cognitive impairment in 50 to 80-year-old Japanese patients.
And then we'll go a little more in depth on cordyceps. So cordyceps is the composite of a genus of fungus that grows on the larvae of insects, C. sinensis, known as Dongzhongxiao, winter worm, summer grass in Chinese, is one of the most famous traditional Chinese medicines and medicinal mushrooms. In China, cordyceps is used to restore health after various diseases and to hasten recovery from exhaustion because of its adaptogenic, anti-stress, properties and ability to enhance endurance and strength. There have been some studies that have shown that cordyceps has anti-tumor activity in various cancers through several pathways. Both natural and cultured cordyceps have demonstrated anti-tumor effects. There are several mechanisms that they think contribute to the anti-tumor effect, such as direct cytotoxicity, immunopotentiation, apoptosis, selective inhibition of ribonucleic acid or RNA, and protein synthesis, as well as antioxidant, anti-angiogenic, anti-mutagenic, anti-metastatic, and antiviral activities. Increasing evidence shows that cordyceps is a bidirectional modulator with both potentiating and suppressive effects on the immune system through regulating innate and adaptive immunity. Natural C. sinensis has a long history of use in the treatment of respiratory infections and cancer. It has been postulated that the responsible mechanism is related to immune activation, particularly the promotion of innate immunity. Due to its inhibitory effect on the immune system, cordyceps can potentially be used for treatment of autoimmune diseases and for immunosuppression after organ transplant. In summary, there are studies that reveal it has effects on both innate immunity and adaptive immunity. Furthermore, cordyceps also has a modulatory effect on gut immune system, which may further influence systemic immune function. There is increasing evidence that it has antioxidant activity, which may be one of the mechanisms behind the anti-aging, anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory, anti-atherosclerosis, and immunomodulatory effects of cordyceps. And then with glucose, so cordyceps has hypoglycemic activity in normal animals. The oral administration of a cordyceps carbohydrate extract at 2 grams per kilogram per day for 25 days increased insulin sensitivity, and the extract had potential beneficial effects by maintaining whole body glucose disposal with a less pronounced increase in insulin secretion after a carbohydrate challenge in rats. In another study, normal rats fed with that same extract at 250 or 500 milligrams per kilogram per day for 17 days showed significant decreases in fasting blood glucose level by 27% and 24% respectively, and the fasting plasma insulin of rats in the 500 milligram per kilogram group decreased by 37%. Furthermore, oral glucose tolerance tests demonstrated that the extract significantly improved glucose tolerance at 0.5, 1, and 2 hours after ingestion of glucose. Cordyceps is also showed an anti-hyperglycemic effect in diabetic animals, although fruiting bodies of natural C. sinensis had no effect on the fasting insulin level in diabetic rats. It improved the weight and attenuated water intake, fasting blood glucose level, and serum concentration of fructosamine in diabetic rats. Therefore, the fermented products of cordyceps can be developed as potential anti-diabetic agents or functional foods for persons with high risk of diabetes mellitus. And then supercritical fluid extract, other than hot water extract, of the cordyceps has shown significant antidepressant-like activity. And then just with cordyceps, I want just to make sure that, just as we mentioned, it's hard with supplements to know if what they're saying they're giving you is what they're actually giving you, because it's not regulated. And a lot of these studies are done, like when I was reading the paper, it was saying that it's hard to get the actual part that they have been doing the studies with, so we get more of a different part of the plant that hasn't been studied as much. But I do still think it is important that we study like these natural supplements, I guess. But buying them online, you're not maybe won't experience some of these just because it might not be exactly what they say it is, and the dosages are going to be probably different too. So just by saying this doesn't mean that all this is going to happen for you, I guess,
Yeah.
either. And it's always, like we say, just important to be safe when considering supplements anyways. So
Yes, definitely. And then next, we're going to talk about antioxidants. So, natural antioxidants like dietary polyphenols could be used in combating ADHD, helping to alleviate oxidative stress on the brain. People with ADHD are at a greater risk of oxidative stress in brain tissue. This can lead to damaged brain cells and altered neurotransmitter levels at electrical center transmission. Polyphenols are chemical weight lifters for the body's immune response. They act as low-dose toxins that train the body to mount an immune response in a process called hormesis. And they influence the survival and regeneration of neurons.
And then with antioxidants, we'll talk about spices. Spices have been shown to have the most antioxidant benefits. So we'll go over a couple here. We'll talk about saffron. So, saffron supplementation has been found by researchers to significantly reduce depression symptoms compared to placebo. A study done in 2017 demonstrated that 15 milligrams of saffron was as effective as 20 milligrams of Prozac in decreasing depressive symptoms. Precise mechanism of action is unknown. In animals, it has been shown to increase levels of the good mood neurotransmitters, glutamate, and dopamine. And then we'll talk about turmeric. So the active ingredient in turmeric is called curcumin. Curcumin was significantly more effective than placebo in reducing depressive symptoms. It adjusts the brain chemistry and protects brain cells against toxic damage that leads to depression. Effective dose has been shown to be 500 to 1,000 milligrams per day. And then I have just a little article here from NIH, National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health, health info on turmeric. So we'll just talk about what have we learned. So turmeric and curcumin have a variety of interesting biological activities, but they're challenging to study because curcumin is unstable. It easily changes into other substances and has low bioavailability. Not much of it reaches the bloodstream when it's taken orally. In addition, the products may differ in composition or contain more substances than expected, which makes the results of research on these products difficult to understand and compare. Because the actions of turmeric and its components in people are complex and not well understood, no clear conclusions have been reached about whether these substances have benefits for health conditions. And what do we know about safety? Well, turmeric and conventionally formulated curcumin products are probably safe when taken orally or applied to the skin in the recommended amounts. Efforts have been made to develop the products with increased bioavailability, and many modified products are already on the market. Improving bioavailability might lead to an increase in harmful effects as well as desirable ones. So, turmeric may be unsafe for use during pregnancy in amounts greater than those commonly found in food. Little is known about whether it is safe to use in amounts greater than those commonly found in food while breastfeeding. And then we'll talk about oregano. So, carvacrol, which is an active ingredient in oregano, was found to have antidepressant activity in mice. Researchers have also connected carvacrol with neuroprotective and antidepressant effects in animals, although to date there are no such studies in humans. And then we just have a Medline Plus here on oregano, which just kind of goes over what it is, which it's a herb used to flavor foods. So how effective is it? There is interest in using oregano for a number of purposes, but as with most of these, there isn't enough reliable information to say whether it might be helpful. And is it safe? Oregano leaf and oregano oil are likely safe when eaten in foods. There isn't enough reliable information to know if it is safe to use in amounts greater than those found in food. Mild side effects include stomach upset. For pregnancy, Oregano is possibly unsafe when taken by mouth in medicinal amounts during pregnancy. There is concern that taking oregano in amounts larger than food amounts might cause miscarriage. So stay on the safe side and stick to food amounts. Breastfeeding, there isn't enough reliable information to know if large amounts of oregano are safe to use when breastfeeding. So again, just stay on the safe side and stick to food amounts. Allergies, oregano can cause reactions in people allergic to Lamiaceae family plants, including basil, hyssop, lavender, mahoram, mint, and sage. And then surgery, large doses might increase the risk of bleeding. So again, just if you're using oregano, you should stop taking it 2 weeks before surgery. Medication effects for anti-diabetes drugs, oregano might lower blood sugar levels. So again, just make sure to be watching your blood sugar closely. And the anticoagulant/antiplatelet drugs, since it might slow blood clotting, it may increase the risk of bruising and bleeding. And then interactions with herbs and supplements. So copper, oregano might decrease the absorption of copper in the body, but it isn't clear if this is a big concern. Iron, oregano might decrease the absorption of iron, but again, unsure if it's a big concern. And then zinc, it might decrease the absorption of zinc in the body, but again, unclear if it's a big concern. There's no known interactions with foods, and it is usually eaten in foods.
Okay, so next we'll talk about tryptophan. Tryptophan is an amino acid. It is the precursor of serotonin. And some of its effects. So in animal studies, tryptophan reaches brain regions that can increase or decrease anxiety. It increases blood and brain serotonin and melatonin. In humans, taking a supplement of purified TRP will increase brain serotonin. A study found that participants consuming higher levels of tryptophan had significantly less depression, irritability, and anxiety. But a different study showed that after just 15 days, purified TRP made participants, especially men, more agreeable and helped them feel better. And then diet. Although purified TRP increases brain serotonin, foods containing TRP do not. So tryptophan is actually the least abundant amino acid in protein, and it's carried into the brain by a transport system that prioritizes other amino acids. And there is some evidence out there that suggests that eating carbohydrates along with protein can increase the tryptophan available to the brain. And then talking about the safety of it. So supplements like tryptophan should only be taken under the supervision of the doctor. And in Canada, it's actually regulated as a medication. And you definitely want to keep the risk of serotonin syndrome in mind as well, because L-tryptophan can interfere with many different medicines. And you don't want to take L-tryptophan if you're on antidepressants or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or MAO inhibitors, tricyclic antidepressants, and atypical antidepressants. Doing so can lead to a life-threatening condition called serotonin syndrome.
And then we'll talk about melatonin. Melatonin is a hormone produced naturally in the brain that regulates the body's circadian rhythms. It can help some people fall asleep. It can be useful for some people with jet lag, and it may help some people suffering with seasonal depression by regulating sleep cycles. And then I just have a couple. So this articles, this is melatonin, what you need to know from NIH. So we already so melatonin is a hormone that your brain produces in response to darkness. It helps, like we mentioned, with the timing of your circadian rhythm. Research suggests that melatonin plays other important roles in the body beyond sleep. However, these effects are not fully understood. Melatonin dietary supplements can be made from animals or microorganisms, but most often they're made synthetically. So with jet lag, we'll just see here, 4 studies that included a total of 142 travelers showed that melatonin may be better than placebo in reducing overall symptoms. Another study of 234 travelers found low quality evidence that it may be better than placebo. So there's evidence that it may help with jet lag, delayed sleep wake phase disorder. So people with delayed sleep wake phase disorder have trouble falling asleep at the usual times and waking up in the morning, typically have trouble falling asleep before 2 to 6 a.m. and would prefer to wake up between 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Melatonin supplements appear to help with sleep in people with DSWPD, but it's uncertain whether the benefits outweigh the possible harms. So in 2015, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine recommended melatonin supplements given at specific times for DSWPD. The recommendation was a weak one, and it came with uncertainty about whether the benefits outweigh its potential harms. There was a 2016 review that looked at a small number of people, 52, from 2 studies, and that showed that melatonin supplements reduced the time it took for people with DSWPD to fall asleep when compared to placebo. On average, it took about 22 minutes less for them to fall asleep. And then a 2018 randomized controlled trial that lasted 4 weeks and had 307 people with DSWPD found that taking melatonin 1 hour before the desired bedtime, combined with going to bed at a set time, led to several improvements. Those improvements included falling asleep an average of 34 minutes earlier, better sleep during the first third of the night, and better daytime functioning. And then there's a section here saying, is melatonin helpful for preventing or treating COVID-19? So I guess there's current research looking at the effects of melatonin on COVID-19 is in its early stages. There are a few randomized controlled trials. At this point, it is too soon to reach conclusions on whether it is helpful for COVID-19. Does melatonin help with cancer symptoms? Studies of melatonin on cancer symptoms or treatment-related side effects have been small and have had mixed results. Can it help with insomnia? Well, people with insomnia have trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, or both. When symptoms last a month or longer, it's called chronic insomnia. According to practice guidelines, there's not enough strong evidence on the effectiveness or safety of melatonin supplementation for chronic insomnia to recommend its use. What about for shift workers? Well, so shift work is a work that involves night shifts, may cause people to feel sleepy at work and make it difficult to sleep during the daytime. According to 2 2014 research reviews, studies on whether melatonin supplements help were generally small or inconclusive. And is it safe to take melatonin? So for melatonin, particularly at doses higher than what the body normally produces, there's not enough information yet about possible side effects to have a clear picture of overall safety. Short-term use appears to be safe for most people, but information on long-term safety with melatonin is lacking. So you also want to keep in mind interactions with medicines. As with all dietary supplements, people who are taking medicine should consult their healthcare providers before using melatonin. In particular, people with epilepsy and those taking blood thinner medications need to be under medical supervision when taking melatonin supplements. There's possible allergic reaction risk, safety concerns for pregnant and breastfeeding. There's been lack of research on safety with use in pregnant or breastfeeding women. Concerns for elderly. 2015 guidelines by American Academy of Sleep recommended against melatonin used by people with dementia, and melatonin may stay active in older people longer than in younger people and cause daytime drowsiness. And yes, that was, let me see. So what are the side effects of melatonin? So you could experience headache, dizziness, nausea, or sleepiness, and the possible long-term side effects are unclear. And so if just some tips, remember that even though the FDA regulates dietary supplements such as melatonin, the regulations for dietary supplements are different and less strict than those for prescription or over-the-counter drugs. Some dietary supplements may interact with medicines. If you're pregnant or nursing, it's especially important to see your healthcare provider before taking any medicine or supplement, including melatonin. You should always read and follow label instructions because natural does not always mean safe. And then take charge of your health. So just talk to a healthcare provider about any complementary health approaches you consider using.
All right, we're going to talk about diet next. So, with antioxidants, the richest sources of polyphenols are berries, cherries, eggplant, onions, kale, coffee, and green tea. And then cloves, star anise, cocoa powder, natural and non-alkalized. Mexican oregano, dark chocolate, chestnuts, and flaxseed meal are good as well. And then black and green tea, blackberries, muscadine, grape seeds, apple cider vinegar, cinnamon, and superfruits such as the marquee berry may also help to decrease inflammation. And then with spices, you could add saffron to vegetable and rice dishes, and you can make a few dishes with a teaspoon or two of turmeric a day. That's a potential solution. And you can add a touch of turmeric to your soups and stews, or even add it to a smoothie. You can make a hot tea with it or add a pinch to your salad dressing. Piperine, a constituent food found in black pepper, increases the absorption and bioavailability of curcumin by 2,000%. So you can add some freshly ground pepper too.
And then for natural food sources of tryptophan, you can eat chickpeas. And as we mentioned, you'll want to have carbohydrates with that to help with absorption. So you can make it into a hummus and combine that with wheat bread, pita bread, if you want. Some other examples that have some tryptophan are cereals with milk, peanut butter on whole grain toast, cheese and whole wheat crackers, pumpkin and squash seeds, roasted soybeans, or cooked tuna. And then for melatonin, could be food sources include eggs, fish, milk, rice, other grains like barley, rolled oats, fruits like grapes and pomegranates, nuts, especially pistachios and walnuts, seeds, so that could be sunflower seeds, mustard seeds, flax seeds, and a variety of vegetables, so asparagus, tomatoes, broccoli, and cucumber. So that was our part on supplements. What is the Mediterranean diet? Well, it is a way of eating that is based on the foods of people who live near the Mediterranean Sea. It was started in 1960s and was inspired by food from countries like Greece, Italy, France, Spain, and the Ottoman Empire. Today, it also includes food from other countries around the Mediterranean like Turkey, the Balkans, Lebanon, Syria, North Africa, and Portugal. The Mediterranean diet focuses on eating certain foods in large amounts and others in moderation. People who follow this diet eat a lot of unprocessed grains, beans, fruits, and veggies, and have moderate amounts of fish, dairy like cheese and yogurt, and meat. Olive oil is a big part of this diet and is believed to have health benefits and lower the risk of health problems.
So, what are some of these health benefits? Studies show that the Mediterranean diet can help people live longer and lower the risk of heart disease and early death. So organizations like the American Heart Association and American Diabetes Association think this diet is healthy and can reduce the risk of heart problems and type 2 diabetes. This diet can also help with weight loss for people who are overweight. The U.S. government considers the Mediterranean diet as one of the 3 healthiest diets, along with the DASH diet and a vegetarian diet. The MIND diet, which helps keep your brain healthy, is based on the Mediterranean and DASH diets. So a review in 2017 found that if people follow the Mediterranean diet, they may have a lower risk of heart problems, cancer, brain diseases, diabetes, and an early death. Another review in 2018 showed that this diet can improve overall health, lower the cost of living, and reduce the cost of healthcare. A different review in 2016 found that Mediterranean diet can lead to weight loss just like other diets. A more recent review in 2019 said that we are still not sure if the Mediterranean diet can prevent heart problems in people who already have them or who don't. And then some studies have shown that the Mediterranean diet may help lower the risk of heart problems. A review in 2013 found some evidence that this diet can improve heart health, but it wasn't a lot. Another study in 2013 looked at different diets, including the Mediterranean diet, and found that the Mediterranean diet along with some others, can help with heart disease and diabetes. However, some reviews in 2016 raised questions about previous studies and said that more research was needed to really understand how the Mediterranean diet affects heart health. Recent reviews in 2016 and 2017 came to similar conclusions, which is that the Mediterranean diet can help lower the risk of high blood pressure and other heart problems. And the Mediterranean diet is low in unhealthy fats and high in healthy fats and fiber. Olive oil is a big part of this diet, and it has special healthy fats that some studies show may be good for you. The European Food Safety Authority has said that olive oil can help protect your heart and blood by reducing the amount of unhealthy fats in your body. A big study in 2014 found that eating a lot of olive oil can lower your risk of dying from any cause, including heart problems and strokes. I'm assuming that's any natural cause of death, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Not like a car accident or something.
Yeah.
I would assume. So, okay. The American Heart Association thinks that Mediterranean diet is good for your heart and can help lower your risk of heart diseases. A few studies in 2014 found that the Mediterranean diet may help lower the chance of getting type 2 diabetes. The American Diabetes Association also thinks that this diet can help reduce the risk of having diabetes. And studies have shown that following the Mediterranean diet closely can lower the risk of dying from cancer. A 2008 study found that it can lower the risk by 6%. A 2014 study also showed that sticking to the Mediterranean diet was linked to a lower risk of cancer death. And in 2017, another study found that the risk of cancer was lower, but the evidence was not very strong. And in 2021, a new study found that the Mediterranean diet was linked to a 13% lower risk of cancer death in general. So if you're an adult who's overweight, you might lose weight by eating less food if you follow a Mediterranean diet. A study in 2019 showed people who are overweight might eat less food with this diet, and it might be better for them if they follow the Mediterranean diet. This could lead to them losing some weight. A study in 2016 showed that people who followed the Mediterranean diet closely might have better thinking skills, but it's not clear if the diet is the reason for this. And then one more study in 2013 found that people who followed the Mediterranean diet more often had a lower risk of getting Alzheimer's disease, and their thinking skills didn't decline as quickly. And then another study in 2013 came to the same conclusion and found that there was less chance of getting Alzheimer's if you have mild thinking problems, but only a few studies have looked at this. So people who follow the Mediterranean diet seem to have a lower risk of being sad and depressed, but this is just based on what people do and don't eat, and doesn't show that the diet is the cause of feeling better. So several studies have shown that ADHD responds well to the Mediterranean eating pattern.
And then we're just going to kind of briefly talk about what the Mediterranean diet consists of. So, it consists of high intakes of olive oil, which is the principal source of fat in the diet, vegetables, which could include leafy green vegetables, onions, garlic, tomatoes, and peppers, fresh fruits, consumed as desserts or snacks, cereals, which is going to be mostly whole grains, nuts, and legumes. Moderate intakes of fish and other seafood, poultry, eggs, dairy products, principally cheese and yogurt, and red wine, and low intakes of red meat, processed meat, refined carbohydrates, and sweets. And then just briefly, we're going to look, there's this article from Mediterranean Diet 101, a meal plan and beginner's guide from Healthline. And we're just going to briefly look here at their sample menu that they provide. So this is a sample menu for 1 week of meals on the Mediterranean diet. And then obviously they say you can adjust portions and food choices based on your own needs and preferences and add snacks as desired. So we'll just go through this quick. So Monday, for breakfast, you might have Greek yogurt with strawberries and chia seeds. For lunch, could be a whole grain sandwich with hummus and vegetables. And then dinner, you'd have a tuna salad with greens and olive oil, as well as a fruit salad. Then the next day, Tuesday, For breakfast, you could have oatmeal with blueberries. For lunch, you could have a caprese zucchini noodles with mozzarella, cherry tomatoes, olive oil, and balsamic vinegar. Dinner, a salad with tomatoes, olives, cucumbers, farro, grilled chicken, and feta cheese. Wednesday for breakfast, an omelet with mushrooms, tomatoes, and onions. Lunch, you could have a whole grain sandwich with cheese and fresh vegetables. And for dinner, a Mediterranean lasagna. Thursday for breakfast, yogurt with sliced fruit and nuts. For lunch, a quinoa salad with chickpeas. And for dinner, broiled salmon with brown rice and vegetables. Friday, breakfast, eggs and sauteed vegetables with whole wheat toast. Lunch, stuffed zucchini boats with pesto, turkey sausage, tomatoes, bell peppers, and cheese. And then for dinner, grilled lamb with salad and baked potato. Saturday, breakfast, oatmeal with raisins, nuts, and apple slices. For lunch, a whole grain sandwich with vegetables. For dinner, Mediterranean pizza made with whole wheat pita bread and topped with cheese, vegetables, and olives. And then Sunday, breakfast, an omelet with veggies and olives. Lunch, a falafel bowl with feta, onions, tomatoes, hummus, and rice. And for dinner, grilled chicken with vegetables, sweet potato fries, and fresh fruit. So that is just a sample menu for a week if you were interested in trying out the Mediterranean diet. And then also on this article, they have like foods to limit, foods to eat. I think they also have like snack choices and eating out. So if you're interested in kind of seeing what else they recommend, don't forget to check them out again. That was Healthline Mediterranean diet meal plan.
Yeah, all that food sounded really good, honestly.
Yes. I feel like the Mediterranean diet does sound like really good. So I definitely want, personally, I want to give it a try. There's some recipes that I found that I want to give a try here, and I'll obviously let you know, but then I'll let everyone else know too how they are. If they're, I mean, if they taste good, mostly taste. Health wise,
Yeah.
that I feel like with diet, it takes time. Like I can't be like tomorrow I'm going to switch to Mediterranean diet and all my problems. And it might not even fix all my problems either, you know, because it's not like a panacea, I think is the word. It's nothing really is. So, but it is good to eat healthy if you can, just in general for your body too. Whether that helps mental health fully or not, that is going to vary per person, but just your body in general, it is good to eat a healthy diet.
Yes, of course.
But yeah, that was the Mediterranean diet.
Yeah, so we want to thank everyone who's been watching, liking, and sharing once again. We do really want to let you guys know that we appreciate you.
And we are excited to have you guys along on this journey with us as we just kind of see where KSSP podcast goes. And as always, if you have any topics you want to hear us talk about in future episodes, you can leave a comment below.
You can reach out to us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. We also occasionally do some Twitch live streams, so follow us there to find out when we go live.
And don't forget to give this video a like, as well as follow or subscribe to our other social media accounts and turn on notifications on those so you get notified when our content comes out. Otherwise, we will see you all in the next video.